That close! Seconds from a 3-win week with 2 clean sheets, and Bournemouth says no. It's also the second time this season that we couldn't follow up a midweek home Champions League win with a weekend Premier League home win. And unfortunately, there are some reoccurring themes emerging which I'll have to explore. Presented by 24/7 Services, let's review Villa 1, Bournemouth 1. Welcome to the parlor, which, as you can see, is a bit short of wall space, but I'm going to have to find some. I'm going to have to move something out so that I can hang these wonderful watercolors of Villa Park. These are done by massive Villa fan and viewer of this show, Dave Baldwin. And this week he sent me an updated version of the 1980s piece that I bought from him a couple of years ago. And I'm debating on whether these should be individually matted and framed or if I should put them somehow together. Thank you so much for sending me the new version, Dave, and for watching this show. Watercolor is the perfect medium to capture the nostalgia of such a beautiful ground.
I'll accept the United game. Wouldn't fire tip that.
Welcome officially then to the Holy Trinity show. You saw David's wonderful interpretation of the glorious original Trinity Road stand, along with the updated watercolor version, the inspiration behind this show's name. But Trinity also means 3. So I attempt to narrow the game down to 3 key issues or moments in a game that ended Villa 1, Bournemouth 1. Providing video captures from the day, our wonderful senior correspondents. Is it my imagination, or has it not rained on Villa Park all season so far? That would be an incredible stat all by itself. Alex Dutton sitting in the Holt, quite disappointed with the end result, as many were. And Samir Gaby looking resplendent in his Emi Martinez top. I'm grateful to both of these beauties for making me feel like I'm there. Apart from the consecutive sunny or non-rainy days at Villa Park stats, as you might expect, very even numbers in this game. We had the better XG, which is an area that the visitors have recently underperformed in, creating chances but not taking enough of them, and that was our problem today. We had a better conversion rate, shots versus shots on target, which is good. More possession, although it's a meaningless number. It seemed like referee Chris Kavanagh was hell-bent on establishing a new Premier League record for yellow cards in one game. The record is 14, which involved Bournemouth from this year against Chelsea. We got to 13 in the end. I was wondering during this game what was going to happen first, a sending off or a goal. Big-ish issue, the tactical battle between 2 very respectable and clever Basque managers, and it was actually Anthony Areola who made the first in-game tweak just half an hour in when he withdrew Julian Araujo after it seemed like Jacob Ramsey and Luca Dean were getting beyond him regularly. And of course, he was on a yellow card. Areola plays the similar man-to-man style that we saw against Bologna on Tuesday. And of course, he will have been very familiar with how Unai Emery likes to set up, but we still opened him up like a can of beans in that first half. Big moment, huge moment actually, Villa's disallowed goal, which may have inspired Araujo's withdrawal. When I saw this live, my gut said, that's out. But even when you look at it down the goal line camera, I don't think it's a clear and obvious fully over the line because that's not the angle that matters. Mike Dean was on Sky's live coverage, and even he said, I'm not sure if that's out, and that would be a very difficult decision for Stockley Park. This is one of many examples of how we got down the sides of the Cherries, but we just couldn't make that final ball across. And if we had scored here, that would have opened the game up, which suits us at home. And if Jacob Ramsey had put even 10 calories less on that ball across, it might have been 1-0, and this is by the slenderest of either millimeters or millimeter. And I've seen the goal line technology where the ball does show some grass between it and the line, and that doesn't matter, that view. What matters is the view from the top down, because if any portion of that ball is infringing on the white line, it's still in play. But Unai Emery very classy afterwards, accepting the VAR decision as final. I thought this was humorous. They do this thing at halftime at Villa Park where a fan gets to try to pass the ball into a giant prize grid that's laid out on the field. And I'm not talking about this young fan in particular, but I do wonder how many of the Villa supporters who were screaming and moaning the loudest about the poor marking or this and that would even be able to pass the ball to reach the prize grid. I really do wonder. Now, the young fan in this case got some helping feet from John Duran, and I understand Emi Buendia did something similar previously. Let's hope those fans weren't disqualified from winning those prizes. I'd like to point out that this haircut was not procured at Alex's barbershop in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield. And you may recall that 24/7 Services went in there several months ago and completely gutted the place, providing a total business rejuvenation, which left the barber and inspiration behind the shop, Alex, absolutely elated. Now, my sources are telling me that Alex's has seen an uptick in business since, which means that clients are being retained, they're coming in to try it for the first time, and they're just feeling more luxurious while they're there. Not to mention, more services were added with an additional hair removal room. I talk a lot on this show about how awesome it would be to have a beautiful and functional new kitchen or new bathrooms, or even just paint and paper on your walls. I mean, you get to enjoy that for years to come, not to mention your guests. But if you're a business, a complete makeover can impact your bottom line as customers either sample or resample your business before converting to regulars. And the incredible thing about Alex's is it only took 24/7 2 weeks. This is what they love to do the most. It's fun, it's tangible, it's dramatic. Visit their website for the Contact Us form or their phone numbers. I've also put those numbers in the description of these videos. Big issue, and this could have easily been top 3, but Mark Travers, the Bournemouth goalkeeper, was easily and by far the game's man of the match. I found it interesting that Kepa, the usual number 1, who's been quite good for the Cherries, was unavailable. And that can go one of two ways for the deputy goalkeeper. Either there's so little time to get anxious, you just go out and you play freely. And that's what it looked like on Saturday. We've also seen it go the other way, where the number 2 goes in and is a little bit wobbly, which is what I think a lot of Villa fans, including me, might have expected when we saw the team news come out. Big moments, a couple of penalty shouts, and ones that I thought we might have gotten away with, as did Anthony Areola and a lot of the pundits on my broadcast feed. The first one involved Antoine Semenyo, who tumbled down in the box, and what was shocking about this was just how decisively our referee, Chris Kavanagh, determined that it was simulation, even booking the big forward. But when you watch it back again and you slow it down, it sure does look like, to me, Cash goes to ground and does get a little piece of the big forward. I think it's very dangerous for referees to start reading the minds of players at any point, but he is so decisive in that moment. It would have been extremely difficult, not to mention embarrassing, for Stockley Park to overturn that. And then just moments later, another example of why the handball law is totally confusing and seemingly arbitrary. And Leon Bailey would have been slaughtered had this been given as a penalty. And I'm not exactly sure why it wasn't, because all of us would have been screaming had the exact same situation occurred in the other penalty area. But thankfully, it wasn't given, and it was just a corner, because we've had this funny habit of conceding really sloppy penalties against Bournemouth at home over the years. Big moment number 3. Barkley's breakthrough. A very interesting stat came from Saturday's game that Villa and Bournemouth lead the Premier League in goals and goal contributions from substitutes. And lo and behold, it would happen again for both teams in this game. Now, Barkley's breakthrough came after what was a really untidy and scrappy patch in this game where it actually felt like the visitors were starting to claw back into it. And up steps a man whose last goal for this club was at Southampton away in 2021, the only one, the game winner. But Ross Barkley had yet to score in front of Villa fans at Villa Park. The move included 10 passes. The last 3 were extremely clever, and it went front to back and back to front again. Jacob Ramsey played a key role as he drove the ball after taking up an infield position before finding Ollie Watkins. And this is great center forward patient play. Watkins won't get an assist for this, but what a fake. He puts on the defender to not only give himself a little bit of room and time, but then he draws a defender to him, which allows him to play in Ian Maatsen. These are the little subtleties in Ollie Watkins' game that he doesn't get enough credit for because most of us only judge him by the goals he scores. Ian Maatsen then stands up a great ball. I mean, he's almost a clone of Luca Dean here, doing what Luca Dean does best. And despite all the criticism that he's been taking of late, Leon Bailey guides a very clever header right into the path of Ross Barkley, who's only too happy to shin it home. Scrappy, yes, but also effective. And we got the goal that we wanted. And so many times since Unai Emery has arrived, and especially at Villa Park, a first goal often precedes a second. Big moment number 2, excruciating equalizer. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, how can a set-piece goal deep into stoppage time that wipes out 2 seemingly secure points not be the number 1 big moment? We'll get to that later. How many times have I said on this show that goals are often the result of a succession of mistakes, not just one? And you know me, I like to wind the video back farther to see where the inception of the goal occurred, not just the final action. In this case, it all starts with an Emi Martinez punt. And when I was a player, I was told by my coaches over and over again, a punt is a 50-50 ball. I get it. You knock it up and long, you may recover it, you may not. Now, Villa's bread and butter has been, under Unai Emery, playing out of the back. When you roll it to feet, you are 100% in possession. I can, however, understand why deep into stoppage time, you might want to launch it 60 to 70 yards in their half of the field. And if you have 4 players under the ball, which we did, you would hope that perhaps we would come up with it and then let them worry about coming back 50 to 60 yards to create a chance. But still, it's a 50-50 ball that you have to go and win. Now, before I talk about the sequence after Emi Martinez's clearance, I want to go back to the Bologna game on Tuesday and something the manager apparently said to our chaotic Colombian. Supposedly, Unai Emery said to John Duran, "You've scored a goal, we've won the game, we've gone to the top of the Champions League table. I don't want to answer questions afterwards about why you came off and started kicking chairs." What an awesome piece of man management that is. And if you're the player, how do you even respond to that? Now, I'm going to predict that at some point this week, if it hasn't happened already, John Duran is going to have a very difficult video debrief. Amidst all the hype and all the buzz and all the goals that he scored, Unai Emery is asking for several things. One is consistency, one is tactical awareness, and one is emotional control. Well, he didn't have emotional control on Tuesday when he was substituted. And one of the other things that we're asking of him in the consistency department is to hit the target when we get into good positions. Well, this was arguably the best position we got into in the entire game. What a layoff that was. And even with time, he doesn't even hit the target to test the goalkeeper. Both the tactical and the mentality aspects of the equalizing goal will be questioned. And that first domino in the sequence is John Duran not properly contesting an aerial duel on the clearance from Emi Martinez. You could make the argument the defender did kind of block him off, but this is either mistimed, ineffective, or both. And this is where you want to take the foul. Here, 70 yards from goal. But John Duran's not the only one who's going to be scrutinized for this little sequence here, this little 10 seconds of where we did not manage the game. After Big John really only gives a token effort on the initial aerial duel, Leon Bailey barely gives the impression of waving his leg in the general direction of the ball, while Duran stands and watches as it goes past him, Ross Barkley, and even through the legs of Boubacar Kamara. Now, I've said on previous shows that one of the things that Duran has been doing well is contesting some of those duels. Well, it didn't happen there. 4 of our players all around the ball somehow let Bournemouth out. And then after that, Ross Barkley decides, well, I'm going to hunt this ball down desperately, even though there's Ezri Konsa in cover. Instead of being patient, he goes to ground, gives away the foul and a yellow card, and now we're suddenly defending a set piece that should have never happened in the first place. From there, though, more questions need to be asked about the actual marking, and you'd think that the opposing striker, maybe one who's adept with his head, would be one of the players that you should focus on, because generally they are one of the poachers in the penalty area. And here's where John Duran probably has to do a little bit more growing up, because he's the closest to Evan Nielsen. Look at all the room that Evan Nielsen has. And when the ball goes in the net, the first thing that Duran does is he puts his arms out and says, well, who's responsible for Evan Nielsen, even though he's the closest one too? And what worries me a little bit is the amount of time and effort and energy we spend on set pieces, both attacking and defending. It will have been crystal clear whose responsibility the marking assignments were. And it didn't look that way, did it? And the number one big issue that defined Villa 1, Bournemouth 1, squandered situations. Did I not say during my Bologna show that the only regret we could have from the game on Tuesday is that we didn't make more of some of the great moments we created in that game? Football is about bottom line, and although some credit has to go to Mark Travers, who stood on his head at points on Saturday, this is now officially a reoccurring issue. Just think about all the moments. I already showed you the Duran one in the second half. What a layoff by Ollie Watkins in that one. But Watkins himself had a chance, 5 minutes in? And I don't understand why he didn't just try to smash this in or slip it between the legs or go high or whatever. He's literally right on the doorstep. I would have banked on him trying to score. Maybe he has a massive assists bonus because he tried to set somebody up in the middle. Not long after, Morgan Rogers had a situation very similar to the one he had in the first half at Fulham last week, and instead of hitting the target again, he skies it over. Yuri Tielemans had a decent look, I think in and around the 14th minute. But maybe the best opportunity of all was a set-piece routine with a perfectly timed run by Amadou Onana, who gets on the backside. And the intent here, I'm positive, is that ball is headed across goal, and either Pau Torres or somebody else comes in and just knocks it in the goal, because the goalkeeper's frozen otherwise. And instead, the ball ends up going towards the far post. Great save by Travers, but judging by Amadou Onana's reaction, I don't think that was the intent in the routine. Ezri Konsa, of all people, was able to tee one up and draw a good save out of Travers. Yuri Tielemans had one where it deflected over. How about the fizzed-in cross right onto the doorstep where Ross Barkley was standing, but he just had no time to react or get any good contact? And then Pau Torres was allowed to wander in and blaze one and get it on target from quite a distance. Not sure how I feel when the supporters all yell shoot in unison anytime a Villa player comes within 35 yards, but I digress. We also got into those tasty positions down the sides of Bournemouth often, but we just could not play the right final ball at the perfect moment. And every single time one of those chances went begging, I thought to myself, we're tempting fate here. This was another game where Morgan Rogers might have been accused of overdoing it several times. And on one hand, you know what? We want Morgan Rogers driving at people, taking them on, dribbling with the ball. On the other, though, in this game, he looked off a couple of easier plays by just laying it off to a teammate, keeping us in possession and progressing forward. Now, he was very effective at Fulham. He was rampaging against Bologna. Unai Emery is now asking him to be consistent. And this is the mentality and the emotional control part that Morgan still needs to learn as an early 20-something. And if Leon Bailey is not scoring yet, and we don't have the goals of Moussa Diaby and Douglas Luiz anymore, well, we need them from somewhere else. And we need them from Morgan Rogers and Jacob Ramsey, and maybe to a lesser extent, Yuri Tielemans and John McGinn. And while I fully believe those goals are still coming, right now we just have not found that final ball or the scoring boots just yet. But we are creating the chances. Now, despite everything I just said, I wrote in my notes at halftime on Saturday, I love this team. We are a unique, dynamic group made up of all these different ingredients, playing an unusual style and creating a landslide of chances seemingly effortlessly against a decent side, which is probably why Unai Emery hailed it as a fantastic performance despite the results. So in the big picture of it all, I want an entertaining team to support. We have that. We have a unique style. Like, I watched other games on Sunday, West Ham, Man United. I have no idea how those two teams are meant to play. We have a style, and we're going to play lesser teams than Bournemouth. And if we create the same amount of chances like we did in the game on Saturday, there is no way we're coming out of the halftime team talk at 0-0. The Sill Hill Brewery star performer was difficult to choose again, but I'm giving it to Jacob Ramsey, who looked very dominant in that first half, had a role in our goal, of course. His general effervescence was noticeable on Saturday, not to mention he's one of our own. I'm pouring Jacob the Holy Trinity Ale, a glorious amber nectar available only at the tap room for only $3.50, and the tap room is open before and after every Villa home game. Alan Evans was in the house on Saturday. Former Victoria Vista, by the way. That's just over there from my youth. I wonder what Alan was consuming on Saturday. And by the way, the tap room is hosting an 82 Villa Legends Night Friday, November 29th. Tickets are selling fast, featuring Williams, Morley, and Bremner. I put a link to those tickets in the description of this video. I love a corner flag shot. This is an artsy shot, thanks to our friend Samir, as we tabulate the categories that I like to update throughout the season. That's now 8 out of a possible 15 league points at Villa Park. Probably below what we expected, but who cares if we keep winning away from home? We did score first, but conceded on a set piece. VAR went against us on the McGinn goal. No changes in the 15-minute game increments, and the only flaw of that metric is that stoppage time adds a lot of minutes and therefore potentially more goals. But we scored early in that final 15 minutes in addition to allowing late. The spread on offside decisions got 5 wider over the weekend as our disciplined back line continued to do its thing. Next up, the Carabao Cup round of 16 in a Wednesday clash with Crystal Palace. I wonder if any of our players hold grudges over what happened on the final day of the season last year when a very hungover Villa side lost 5-0 at Selhurst Park, but I digress. Crystal Palace is coming off a monumental home win over Spurs on Sunday, a team they never beat. I think they benefited a little bit from Tottenham having European action in midweek, but still a huge victory. How will Oliver Glasner approach Wednesday's game, given that this coming weekend they're at Wolves? A chance for them to really put some distance between themselves and that bottom 3, and Wolves no longer in this competition, so they'll have the week off. That's an interesting dynamic. For us, I think we have to manage these next 2 weeks very carefully because look at what's ahead of us. Sunday at Tottenham, Wednesday, Club Bruges or Brugge in the Champions League, and then we're at Liverpool. It's a week that will separate the wheat from the chaff, and the good news is all the teams that we're playing are in a similar position of having to play 3-game weeks. Will we see a Tyrone Mings-Diego Carlos central defensive pairing in front of Robin Olsen? Might we have a Boubacar Kamara-Ross Barkley central midfield duo behind Duran and maybe Buendia with Philogene and McGinn or Ramsey and Bailey on the flanks? I mean, if it's yes to any of those questions, you could see how important a deep and healthy squad is going to be for us, especially with the situation we kind of find ourselves in this competition. And yes, I know it's number 4 on the list of priorities, but it's number 4 for many of the Premier League teams still left in this competition. And I know this is contentious. People want us to win trophies, and this one may actually provide the easiest route. But still, I'm okay with rotation and giving meaningful minutes to some of those players that we might need more of down the line. So here's my assessment to this point of the season. And by the way, I don't think this is half full, but it certainly isn't empty. We somehow finished the weekend still in 4th. And both Liverpool and Arsenal dropped points. Arsenal dropped a player. Gabriel hobbled off. Brighton dropped points. Maybe our biggest threat from behind is now Chelsea. That's not a surprise. We've played 13 games in all competitions. We've lost once, and that one loss, when you look back at it, might have been a different story had Ollie Watkins been in mid-season form. And you know what? That Bournemouth team is going to take points off of all of the teams in and around us this season. Maybe most importantly of all, though, we're some wood to touch. We are fully fit at the moment. Until the Cup on Wednesday, stay awesome. And as always, up the mighty Villa.